everyone, welcome to CresTV, your weekly roundup from Crestron and the industry. I say it almost every week. I'm very excited about this show. But I am. This could be the big one. For me, I've been trying to get this together for, I don't know, I'll have to look back, for at least a year, 18 months. And finally, the planets and the world, the stars aligned. And my guest agreed to come on to CresTV to talk to us today about Microsoft Teams and all things Microsoft. I don't think he needs much of an introduction because he is a legend in the industry. But we'll go there. And for those who are sleeping in a darkened room, we'll certainly cover that off. So my guest today, let's cross over live to Seattle. It is kind of Seattle, I guess, that way, is it, Ilya?
Yeah, suburb of Seattle.
Yeah,
Brooklyn.
very good. So Ilya Bukshteyn from Microsoft, welcome to CresTV. Early in the morning for you, so thank you for getting up. For those, as I say, who have been sleeping in a darkened room and don't know you, that one person maybe, tell us about yourself and what you do at Microsoft.
Thanks, Neil. I'm pretty sure many people don't know me, but so for those folks, my name's Ilya Bukshteyn, like you said, and I'm the vice president for Microsoft Teams devices. So I've got the privilege of leading the engineering part of the Teams engineering team that is focused on purpose-built experiences for purpose-built devices. Been at Microsoft, it will be 28 years in September.
Wow.
So I remember running pre-release builds of Windows 95 just to date myself, and how excited I was about that. And then in this space, it seems like a very long time. There's a break in the middle, but I was involved right up front when it was live communication server
LCS,
and then office communication server. Yeah, for those that really follow Microsoft, we had what we call UC Day. So Unified Communications Strategy Day. Jeff Rakes announced it. I was behind the scenes driving that announce with luminaries like Zig Serafin and Gurdeep Singh Paul. Yeah. I left for a little while to do some other stuff. Came back when Gurdeep and Zig actually came back to run Link, Skype for Business. I've been doing partner engineering, led Cloud PBX for a while. Came up with what is now known as Microsoft Teams Rooms. That was an idea we had in Gurdeep's office. I still remember that. It was a great moment. He actually ran out of his office going, "Where's Zig? I got to tell him about this." Very excited. And then been in Teams, gosh, I think since definitely pre-pandemic, so since 2018 or so. Pandemic time just like erases all the time, right?
We will talk about that, absolutely. As I say, that must have been a crazy time in Microsoft. But you mentioned, you said LCS, OCS, Link, Skype. They kind of seem to have this kind of 5-year kind of window. And congratulations for 5 years of Teams. So tell us, what's is Teams version 2 kind of next for you? Are you working on that? How does that kind of fit in?
Well, I think the way I think about it, we're on Teams version X, because I think, like, when I look at Teams, and if I were to try to look at Teams pre-pandemic, I think it would almost be hard to recognize.
Yeah.
I think that, like, I put a slide together with some of my colleagues of all the stuff we've been doing for hybrid work, and all the screen images had to be tiny tiles because there was like so many on each slide of things we shipped. So I think the pace of ability to innovate in the cloud is so much better and faster. One of the challenges we had with Link and Skype for Business, because of the on-prem deployment model, if we added a new feature, it would on average be 12 to 18 months until 20% of users had that feature. And so, super difficult. Like, we'd be talking to customers about stuff that we feel like we had addressed, but they didn't have it.
We fixed that in that version.
Yeah. But even if we said, okay, yeah, you're right, that is a great idea, we're going to do it, you'll get it in 2 years. Like, that's just not going to fly very much. So I feel incredibly fortunate for the technology bets that we made in Teams. That Brian McDonald, who's sort of the father, grandfather of Teams, and his small team made, and that we've carried forward. There are some major technology advancements that you could think of as Teams 2x or 3x. moving from Angular to React for all of the UX code allowed us to be more efficient and allowed us to do what I'm doing now, which is to have a pop-out meeting window. And now actually I could have, if we were sharing content, I could pop that out into a separate window. We've moved all of the business logic now to React. And then recently with the version of Teams that we did for end users in Windows 11, so not the business version, that version actually used or moved on, I should say, from Electron. So our VP of engineering, Rish, CVP of engineering, Rish Tandon, posted about this. So moving from Electron to something called WebView 2 for the control also has a ton of performance, memory footprint benefits. And so we're going to be migrating over time the Teams business version or Microsoft 365 version, similarly 100% React, WebView 2, which we think will continue to gain like really significant CPU performance benefits and allow us to continue to add new capabilities.
Wow. It's interesting because you guys actually, you're one of the few vendors that actually publish your roadmap, publicly. You can go to Office 365/Teams/Roadmap, whatever you'll put it in the chat link below in the comments, but you can go and see the roadmap for Teams. You can go and check where it's like a 3 or 6 month roadmap. Again, that's kind of almost unheard of in the industry, that roadmaps are NDA and secret and all the rest of it. And you guys are like, this is coming, it's brilliant.
We try. We may get a little more responsible on the roadmap because I think so upside and downside, right? For folks like you and others who kind of track us, it's great to see that horizon and you kind of get that it moves around. For some of our customers, if we say, hey, something's coming in 3 months and then it moves, and granularity being what it is, there's a good chance it'll move by a quarter, that can be unnerving. So I think moving forward, we're going to try to put things in the roadmap only when they're in the sort of TAP stage, technology adoption program. And that means that, we've kind of finished it. We're debugging it, but we're also really focused on the feedback cycle, and we're going to be quality driven on the final release. So just try to give customers a little more like it's that balance of predictability plus transparency.
Yeah. That's really good. It's interesting because other point I was going to mention to you. So traditionally, Teams has always been a Windows platform. The original MS Skype Room Systems. Let's see if I get my names right. Skype Room Systems for Link, and then all that kind of stuff. And then obviously the MTRs, the Teams Room Systems. But then obviously more recently, we saw the kind of introduction of the MTR for Android. It seems to be. Can you tell us kind of how that sits? It always seems to be that Windows is the kind of feature first, and then kind of Android gets it as a kind of follow up. Where do you kind of, again, how do you position that to customers?
Well, since you brought up the history, certainly Link Room Systems, which was during that gap when I wasn't there, so this predates me.
You took no responsibility for that one.
I ended up, it moved to my team when I took over Rooms, but that was very much a bet on the other product I actually worked on, which was Windows Embedded. So it was Windows Embedded. When we did what was named by our marketing team Skype Room Systems V2, we tried to be sort of one step more IT friendly, if you will, by being based on just normal Windows. And by the way, there's a lot of confusion about that. It's the IoT license, which enables Crestron and other OEMs to buy the license, put it on the device. But it's Windows Enterprise. Like it's same bits. And we feel like there's a ton of value in that, from manageability, Intune, now MEM, security with Defender for Endpoint, ability to manage it very similarly to how you in general manage PCs. So we get a ton out of being based on a mature, secure, updatable operating system. And in fact, every feature we've shipped so far has gone all the way back to the very first Skype Room System V2. Like, we have not said, hey, as of X, you have to, you don't get new features. Not saying that will never happen. That's not a guarantee. In fact, at some point, I could probably guarantee we will have to do that. But one of the reasons we were able to do that is because we look at the whole ecosystem and we can say, hey, we can move these devices forward to Windows. And by the way, even if we don't, Microsoft I believe, is pretty good at saying we will continue to support and offer security updates and maintain a slightly older version of Windows to be secure. So lots of benefits to Windows. But at the same time, there's a growing ecosystem of ARM-based devices that are cheaper than Intel-based devices, so lower cost, pretty good performance, optimized for various things, and running Android, or in the PC space, Windows for ARM. And so OEMs approached us and talked about some of the benefits. And I think the main thing for us was there were customers who said, hey, we want absolutely to go Android. In fact, it's a little bit binary. Originally, our hypothesis for Android devices was that they would be great for smaller, less complex rooms. For example, there's no plug-and-play concept in Android. So you really can't do a modular sort of a boardroom configurable system of the type that Crestron is so good at.
Lights, shades, blinds, AV, all the integration.
So you can't really do that on Android. And so that was our original hypothesis, was we would do both. Windows would make sense for all rooms. Android, as a choice, would make sense for some rooms. What we found was customers, as I said, were a little bit binary. And so we have some customers that are like, no Android ever. We have some customers that are only Android. And so our goal is to offer choice. In fact, my goal is great Teams meetings in every space. That's our mission. And so to do that, I need a broad portfolio of devices with our partners, which offers choice in every size, shape, style of room. Now, I think what you were sort of hinting at is Windows still kind of going to be first? And I'll say there's no religion about that here. It's not, Microsoft is the Windows company, therefore. It is very much about what we get in the OS and how quickly we can innovate. I would love to sim ship every feature on both platforms. I don't think that's realistic for at least the next year. As I said, there's no plug and play concept in Android. There's definitely different optimization that has to be done around AI capabilities and some media capabilities. And the other thing in the Android ecosystem is there's, I would say, much less uniformity and much less ability for us to sort of guarantee a roadmap for customers.
I noticed that some of those have been now older versions of Android now are going to be kind of, and again, you said what Windows is like, supported from now until eternity. Some of the older versions of Android, you as Microsoft obviously can't put your name onto a platform that doesn't get security updates and patches and things like that from the operating system vendor. So
OEMs make a selection of SoC, of chipset. We then have to make a decision whether to build support for that chipset or not. There does have to be some low-level work done to support our media stack and our app on that chipset. And then it's the OEMs who provide the OS image. And so they have to work with their ODM and or the SoC vendor every time a new major version comes out, because they have to build what's called a board support package. You have to support that Android version, AOSP version on that chipset. And so, we don't know when we will be forced to take a dependency that does not allow us to support an older version. And so what we've said is we will, support a version for 2 years, and then it's best effort after that.
Right.
And we highly encourage our OEMs to keep their devices up to date. It's a great platform. It's a challenging conversation with IT. I'm having the conversation with our own internal IT folks about, if I remember right, their policy on mobile is any update has to be installed within 24 hours or they block the phone.
Goodness.
And so, this is different. Again, we want to provide customer choice, and we'll sort of do our best on each platform.
Very, very cool. Now, you mentioned obviously the pandemic earlier. This blurred 2 years. I remember, say when Teams first came out, all the customers we were talking to in a previous life were all saying we're on a journey to Teams. We'll get 18 months, 2 years. We're going to sweat this Skype thing. With this cloud thing is like, we're not interested in the cloud. It's all on-prem. We love our servers and our flashing lights. And then, lockdown happened. The evacuation of the office happened, and those 2 years, 18-month journeys became 2 week, 2-day journeys. People were rapidly transitioning to. What was it like in Microsoft watching the numbers must have been like off the hockey stick, off the chart with regards to transition. What was that like, just being at Microsoft?
Yeah, I think it was exciting, humbling, angst-inducing time. If you look at our public numbers, we went from, if I remember right, we had announced 20 million monthly active users pre-pandemic. To our last public release, we said 270 million monthly active users, and of course that's a little while ago, so it's more since then. So yes, that's a hockey stick. For us, specifically, I'm part of the calling, meetings, and devices area. Boy, it's interesting. We were all trying to adapt, which I will say personally initially was really hard. Just sort of 9, 10, 11 hours straight of sitting here in meetings initially with no breaks.
Back to back, yeah.
Yeah, and I think just as human beings, not having that direct connection, everything kind of became more challenging. Stuff that you would just walk over and talk out really quickly was now a meeting or a call. So we were trying to adapt. Our customers were rapidly trying to adapt, and in some cases sort of scrambling. There was an airline that contacted me on LinkedIn, actually, a major airline, and the gentleman, and I'm not going to name him, just I can't remember. No names. But he said, they were a Skype for Business on-prem user, much like you said, and they had an on-prem culture in terms of their CEO wanted a meeting with everybody weekly in person, and now can't have that. And so they were saying, boy, help, effectively. And so they were, saying, how can you help us have meetings that feel like we're all in person, that upgrade their team's rooms to give the CEO a better experience, and they were able to do it. And so we circled back with them, and they said, hey, we kept going. Obviously, difficult time for airlines, but they were we kept going, and they transformed their culture. Their CEO is now okay not having everyone together all at the same time. And that's just one journey. There were so many journeys of customers that were just inspiring and humbling. And then at the same time on the product, oh my gosh, we had a 2-year roadmap that became you have to deliver this yesterday. Just video. Pre-pandemic, the average number of video streams in a meeting was 2 point something.
Yeah, no one turned their cameras on. No one turned their cameras on.
And so all of a sudden it was okay, now there's 50. And so the journey from 4 to 9 to 49 to 49 with paging, and then together mode, blur background and all the other stuff. Together mode was great. And again, the blur background was another great thing that just came. The feature velocity that you guys were churning out features during the pandemic was just ridiculous. I'm guessing a lot of it, the sort of shift to more the desktop client versus the room systems. Again, that's where people were consuming Teams was on a desktop at home generally, I guess. Yeah, we certainly. So a couple of interesting things about that. One, we certainly put a ton of focus on desktop and mobile.
Yeah.
The other thing that we did is we did actually re-architect the Teams Rooms client. We previously were using the desktop client, but sort of refactoring it. And so anytime a new feature arrived, it would take us a couple of quarters to get it on MTR. And we became way more efficient. So when you're in a Teams meeting now, you're using the desktop client with some specific sort of switches, if you will. And so we get the stage, every new feature that comes to the stage super quickly. And that's on Teams Rooms and Teams Rooms on Surface Hub, which was a major update.
And a nice new camera, by the way, as well. I saw like recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I only know the internal name. I think it's the smart camera, the Surface Hub smart camera, if I remember right.
We'll put it in the chat. I don't know. I saw it and it did look very smart as an add-on to the Surface. Yeah. Nice job on that.
Yeah. So one, we gained a ton of velocity. Huge credit, by the way, to the team. Like during a pandemic, having devices at home, I still have an MTR and a Surface Hub behind me in my little office, much to my wife's dislike. I mean, there were people who on my team who converted their garage to test labs. Like it was just an incredible effort.
Wow.
But I think the cool thing about that is the velocity we gained on Teams Rooms. And now moving forward soon this year, for those of you that know the Teams Rooms client, there's both a Skype for Business and a Teams client. And the sort of home client, the home screen is still the older Skype for Business client, the XAML client. And we're going to flip that. So it'll be Teams first. You'll only run those older Skype for Business bits if you want to join a Skype for Business meeting. So I'm pretty excited about that too.
Yeah, so let's talk about the future then. So clearly, we've all been locked down, and now we've all kind of the great awakening, the great unlocking has happened. You had some in-persons, I think last week, which is about meeting human beings again. So talk to me about where things go. Front row looks amazing. Return to the office is obviously the big piece. Talk to us about front row. Talk to us about all that kind of stuff and what's going to be added on there.
Sure. I think you kind of called it, which is we are all, as human beings, excited to see other human beings in person. But we are also all more distributed than ever, more free, or I should say, have more flexibility than ever. So I think, as much as it's just horrible to say, there's sort of the silver lining to the pandemic in terms of evolving how we work. Don't get me wrong. I would not want another pandemic.
Talk about benefits of the pandemic, but yes, I get what you mean. I've used that phrase myself.
Do that once in a lifetime, right? But the change in how people work is amazing to see. We saw at Enterprise Connect where our keynote was hybrid. We had Nicole Herskowitz virtual, or from Redmond. We had Mahendra, who's our VP for calling, be there in person. And so the question, I think, from every customer is, how do we make that actually work? Because nobody wants to go back to pre-pandemic where the remote participant was sort of an onlooker, kind of second-class citizen. But at the same time, there's now worry that the people together physically in rooms are going to be second-class citizens. Because the thing that used to be state-of-the-art, having a camera up front showing you the whole room, that's not even close to what you and I are having right now, where we each get our own square of video. So
we're used to seeing this bit of everybody, aren't we? I mean, this is what we've just had for the last 2 years.
Right. And there's benefit to seeing the whole room and seeing context of where we're sitting next to each other and kind of where we're positioned. But everyone wants to see faces. And if you're in the room and you're one of 10 people and no one can see your face, you're feeling disadvantaged and not included. So front row and the work we're doing with partners on what we call intelligent audio, intelligent speakers, and intelligent cameras, that is all about trying to evolve the experience on both ends to be more inclusive. So I'm very proud of what the team did on front row. I feel like it's surprisingly maybe the first innovation in at least the modern rooms experience in a while. So with front row, we really tried to bring remote participants more on the same level as people in the room, bring the gallery down, scale it so that it's eye level, it's a face-to-face connection, while keeping content centered, but then adding space, especially if you have ultra wide screen displays and projectors, adding space that we can use to bring more elements of the meeting into the room instead of on your personal device. So today it's chat on one side and raise hands queue on the other. But coming very soon, we call Front Row Preview, even though it's available to everyone, because it's missing a couple of what we think of as signature elements that are coming very soon. One is positional audio. So if my video is on the left side and I'm speaking, the audio will come from where my video is.
Wow,
and that's
nice.
much more natural for people. Two is we're very excited about what we call loop components in Teams.
Okay.
And we're bringing that to Front Row. So instead of having static chat and raise hands, we're going to be able to display more information about the meeting. For example, if no one has their hand raised, we can show meeting notes, transcript, agenda, and then when someone does raise hands, we pop that up. We'll also over time move the raise hands to be specific to the person. So you'll see the queue here, but
In
you'll
front
see
of the...
exactly Ilya's hand raised. And if you want to see transcript until someone does a new chat message, we can do that as well. So very excited about that. That's for the in-room participants. For people outside the room, the intelligent cameras, for example, Crestron just made this great partnership or deal with One Beyond.
Yeah.
The ability to add AI into cameras and over time to have multiple cameras in a room. We support that today with Teams rooms with manual switching.
Mm-hmm.
Our vision is that we'll have kind of a virtual director in the cloud. The idea behind all of that is to give that more cinematic experience of people's faces, plus the overall room, plus the ability to shift the viewpoint as if there were cameramen and a director there, all to kind of make it more natural and inclusive.
Very, very cool. Last couple of things before I let you go, because thank you for joining us today. Interop.
Yes.
It's a white elephant in the room, or big elephant in the room. Clearly, many people, as you said, the amount of activations Teams is massive, but there is always that time where you've got to join somebody else's meeting. You've got to join the supplier's meeting or the customer's meeting, whatever, and they might not be on Teams, let's say. What's your view on this? Because there's always, again, from my previous life, there was always this challenge around, wanting to be able to switch, full apps, thick apps between the different apps, where the way in which Teams has always done it is through like WebRTC and bring up a browser. Give us the kind of de facto, where do you sit on Interop? What's the deal?
So first thing I want to say is that we're very committed to Interop, specifically for rooms. On a PC or a mobile phone, you have a choice of apps. It is not difficult to switch apps. In a room, when there's a room system, we take over what we call input one on that display. And it's very difficult for an end user to do anything else. And kind of disappointing if you can't use the great audio system, camera, et cetera, in the room. We get that. So we had been trying a couple of different approaches for years. And one approach is the cloud gateway approach. That's the sort of outside in. So, hey, if you have legacy, I'll say, I know that's maybe not the word everyone would use, but if you have VTCs, you're not quite ready to replace them, you want them to join Teams meetings, there's a gateway in the middle. And we do that with partners.
Cloud Video Interop,
Now, the other direction is, hey, I have Teams rooms, but as you said, Neil, like somebody sends me a Zoom meeting or a Blue Jeans meeting or a WebEx meeting. And we had been thinking about different ways to do this. We looked at, hey, do we work with Zoom and Cisco and others to load their apps? But that very quickly, load their apps on the Teams room, it very quickly turns into a nightmare. If you sort of think about it from the IT perspective, like, okay, so let's say on Teams rooms, are Zoom going to give us their bits to distribute?
And updates every week, because again, their velocity, I'm sure.
Now let's say they do, right? Do we manage that up? Because there's updating, there's settings,
security,
there's a bunch of management, there's security. I don't think we can build that all into the Teams admin console, right? The Teams admin center or TAC. So then the IT pro is using both the Zoom portal and the Teams admin portal, plus the WebEx portal, plus the Blue Jeans portal.
Plus.
And by the way, which one wins, right? So like let's say one app is out in front and Zoom's minimized. Can you still push settings to it? That's not to mention the work every vendor would have to do, because we all assume our app is an appliance. It's always up front.
Yeah.
So things like proximity join, Teams cast, like that won't work. So a gentleman on my team who's now in charge of Teams rooms named Greg Barable was smarter than I was about this, and came to me and said, all these services have web clients that are always up to date.
Yep.
Each service is responsible for the UX and how rich or what features it has. And all the modern room systems can run a browser control. Yep. And so we actually, investigated, built it out, patented it, and then we approached everybody else in the industry. And so we are currently partnering with Zoom, WebEx, BlueJeans, and GoTo, their new name.
Wow.
There's one conspicuously missing, and as I always say, anyone at Google, just return my call. Happy to chat.
Call me.
We'd love to make some progress there. But that, I believe, that's a very long story. That, I believe, is both a huge shift for the industry and the way forward, which is to say a modern room system can host a web control, not browser, right? You never see a browser, but web control version optimized for a room experience of non-native meetings. It doesn't have to be managed, doesn't have to be updated, not an IT nightmare. Now, the other thing I'll say about that is I totally realize that there are some feature gaps today.
Sure.
The ones I heard of are support for HDMI ingest, joined by meeting code, and dual screen support. Joined by meeting code is coming for Teams all up, by the way, and then for Teams on non-native rooms and for the non-native services on Teams rooms. HDMI ingest, we know how to do. We just need work on it, so that's going to come. Dual screen, we want to get done. That's one that I would say we don't necessarily know exactly how to do, because no service.
They're not the same. Again, each browser layout is the same, different. So you're going to stretch the windows like massive widescreen resolution, or open two windows. Again, that's going to be a minefield.
There's a developer on our team right now investigating and trying to be smart and figure this out. And as soon as we do, we're committed, as are Zoom and WebEx, to doing the work. So that's my belief, is that this is the manageable, secure, always up-to-date path for that occasional join scenario, which is, by the way, what I think is the reality.
It's the 80-20, 90-10, isn't it? I mean, it's the
exactly
the majority of those calls. I really, again, it's such a refreshing outlook from you. We were in this world of islands before, and it's so refreshing to hear that, again, you're not locking people down. You're saying, yes, you can have that ability to join those other apps. You don't have to kind of run up a bunch of systems, and we understand it. There is going to be that requirement, and we'll give you that functionality. It's absolutely amazing.
And I think the thing you could help me with is I do think some OEMs or other partners kind of paint this like, if only Microsoft would just let us load all the apps.
You're always the bad guys.
And if I thought there was a way of doing that was manageable and secure and didn't create a matrix of end portals that IT had to use, I'd totally do it. I just think, unlike, we still need to support that device even after the OEM finishes the sale. Like, it's a Teams experience. So that's what we're committed to, is having a great experience for the IT folks who buy these devices.
And it'd be your responsibility as well. If something goes wrong in the app, if the app crashes, it's your name on the front screen. So if there's a security hole, if there's something goes wrong, that Microsoft system's gone wrong again, because the CEO will just see the Teams room system logo. They won't it's a Zoom app running, or a WebEx app, or whatever app running on a Teams room system. So I think
you're dealing with that right now. One of the, I won't say which, one of the vendors had a pretty major rewrite of their web app, ran into some issues with WebRTC, and all of a sudden their experience had freezing video, and like you said, the CEO of a major company had us on the line. That's okay, right? Like, we have agreements with all the people I mentioned that we mutually support each other, and we'll make it work.
Okay, last one for you, and this is an interesting one at the moment. So during the pandemic, there was this kind of mass panic of we must put something in the room quickly. People are coming back, and people went out and grabbed like USB devices and said, people who use their laptop during lockdown, they know how to do stuff now. They know how to drive this thing. We'll just put BYOD in. Again, from a competitive point of view, the Teams room system, one of the biggest competitors is BYOD. People using the Teams app on their laptop and then just kind of plugging in a USB, plugging in an HDMI and driving the experience on the laptop. But I can think of a few reasons why you shouldn't. Obviously, the great front row stuff and all the great innovations in Teams room you talked about. But give me Ilya's view of Teams in a meeting room setting, obviously not on a desktop, in a meeting room, Teams room versus BYOD.
Well, so first of all, I want to say that again, my mission is to make Teams meetings great hybrid meetings in every space. So we will do things to make that BYOD scenario better. It is not a great scenario today. You bring in your laptop, you plug in. If you're doing PowerPoint Live, everyone in the room sees your notes in the PowerPoint Live view. There are multiple sort of sharp edges. So we will look at trying to make that experience better. Mm-hmm. But there's a couple of things I would identify, or I would say customers should think about. First of all, is the space managed or not? That to me is the first question, because when you put in a peripheral, there is no, and OEMs all have different answers, but this is my take. If it's not plugged into the network, there is no way to keep it updated, keep the firmware updated, to know if it's working or not working. To see how good of an experience people are having with it, which is why some vendors are saying, well, it's not just USB, you could plug it into the network. And then, okay, how many of those tools are, it becomes sort of a pseudo room system without all the smarts and all the manageability. So if it's managed, if you want to manage the space, if you want to know if it's working, if you want to know that it's up to date, and patched, because by the way, many of these things are now running Android. If you want to sort of know the experience your folks are having in that space, that should be a room system. That's a core benefit. Secondarily, I would say the ease of installation and cost are the two things I hear. Well, some of our Teams room systems are now as simple to set up in terms of the physical, bar style devices, you plug them in. They're as simple to set up as BYOD USB peripherals. They've come down in cost a lot, but also when it comes to cost, I would sort of encourage everyone to look at the whole picture. For example, at Microsoft, one of the things that shocked me when our IT team, now called MS Digital, told me this, they did a study, and in any room where you're plugging and unplugging HDMI, that room breaks at on average 2 laptops a year, because that port's not awesome. So if you're breaking 2 laptops, you've just more than paid for a room system. Yeah. So there's multiple costs involved. I guess what I would say to folks is, if for whatever reason, if you don't think a space is manageable, or you don't have cost, and you want to go with BYOD, pick something that can grow up later, can be upgraded later to a Teams room. Yeah. You can pick a USB audio-visual peripheral, see how that goes. But if it's one that's certified for Teams rooms, you have optionality later. You can add the rest of the Teams rooms.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a meeting with one of the UK team from Microsoft, and we had it there. We were at a hotel last week, and they just gave us a screen, and we brought in just a USB camera, and it was the joke of it's that 15 minutes of setup of you plug a USB and you got the drivers. It displays the wrong resolution, half of it's off the screen, the HDMI, and it's like that 15 minutes you don't get from a Teams room. You come in, you click join, it's set up.
That was my very original goal with what became Teams rooms and Skype room systems V2 was start meeting in seconds instead of minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And based on every telemetry and feedback we've got, we achieved that. And of course, the bar goes up now. It's great, inclusive hybrid meetings. But I think knowing that everything is always on, always connected, always up to date, reporting when you can't use it. The other interesting tidbit from Microsoft IT, they figured on average it took about a month for them to know something was wrong in a BYOD room.
All right.
And of course, they know minutes on a Teams room. So internally for us, out of our 13,500 rooms that have displays, we have another 1,500 rooms that have nothing, like no display. They're just huddle spaces. Out of our 13,500 spaces with displays, 7,500 have Teams rooms today.
Wow.
And we just agreed that our mission, our sort of destination, we're still figuring out how long it'll take, is to move all of them to Teams rooms.
Wow.
So
okay.
our IT team, who are a customer, they're customer zero, they're customer, they are convinced. It's not that I have to apply pressure. They are convinced that every space should be a Teams room.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Well, thank you ever so much for coming on. I had a call saying my dinner's ready, so I think that's a great time to call time on this one. But can I get you back in the future? You know, this is always evolving, and it's been great. Again, we've done like 40 minutes already, and it's just blown by. And I think there's a whole bunch of other stuff we got. But thank you ever so much for getting up early and joining us here on CresTV. And again, amazing job and all this, and I can't wait to see Front Row working with all the great intelligent cameras and all that stuff. It's really, really awesome. Thank you, Ilya.
Thank you, Neil. My absolute pleasure. Happy to come on anytime.
Very, very cool. And thank you all for tuning in and watching us here on CresTV. It's the place to be every week. And hit subscribe, ring the bell, tell your friends, do all that good social stuff, and we will see you on the next one.